Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Pocket Mentor. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for another purposeful learning session here on Pocket Mentor. And welcome to those who have just tuned in for the first time. And for those of you who regularly follow our sessions, thank you for your loyalty. And we rest assured that we will, of course, we will give you a good session today. And of course, hope you are all keeping safe at home if you are working from home. And for those of you who are actually going to the office, please make sure to stay safe, keep safe, and remember social distancing, wear your mask, and wash your hands regularly, okay? So, let's begin today's session, and today is going to be quite an inspiring and practical session, especially during this time. Our guest mentor will talk about corporate intrapreneurship. Okay, yes, you heard it right, intrapreneurship. So, well, let him explain it later on, and he will also discuss why this is the main motor for corporate innovation today. And because, let's face it, we've heard it before. It is not the strongest of species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but really the species that are most adaptable to change. And this is true even for businesses. And this pandemic has actually made that even more relevant today, that businesses should be able to adapt quickly. So let me just introduce our speaker for today for this live session. He is the CEO and co-founder of Mbigan, an innovation consulting firm that enables organizations from emerging markets to generate and implement innovation and digital transformation. So to build meaningful growth using blueprints from Silicon Valley. He is also the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Far Eastern University Institute of Technology and the CEO and co-founder of Neighborly, a pioneering hyper-local community commerce platform built to make community buying and selling organized, streamlined, and efficient. Whew. Dami na niya nagawa, no? In his young age, and you'll see him. So, Rolan Garcia, our speaker for today, is also a U.S. Department of State Professional Fellow for Economic Empowerment, Young Southeast Asian Leaders. Okay, so guys, let's all tune in and learn today. Let's all welcome Mr. Rolan Garcia. Rolan, you've got the floor.
Thanks, Robbie. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me as one of the mentors. This year, so in the past few years, we've been working in the tech scene, in the innovation ecosystem in the Philippines, trying to answer the question, why are some countries more innovative than other countries? And we found out that first world countries or tech meccas in the world, like Israel, Silicon Valley, India, or even some parts of Europe, like Paris and Germany, are tech-based ecosystems, number one. But secondly, they are the DNA of innovation is very much embedded in their culture. And this is where my work led me. There are different areas that we've been trying to do this. In the US, in Hawaii, and in Washington, D.C. We went there to see how they're doing it specifically for young people and for corporations. And we're currently doing this in FEU. As you know, one of the hardest hit sectors in the Philippines is the education sector. A lot of people, our students, transition from offline learning to online learning. So there's a lot of digital transformation that needs to happen. And secondly, what we want to do is to create student founders, tech founders. And through my own work in the private sector, We've also launched Neighborly, which is an e-commerce platform specifically for residential communities and different communities, because we've seen the mega trend transition from a one-size-fits-all e-commerce platform to a more local e-commerce platform. And lastly, my work led me to founding Beacon Consulting, which is an innovation consulting firm specifically for corporations. And this is where we'll touch on the talk earlier this afternoon. And hopefully, you guys will have some questions as I brush on what corporate intrapreneurship is all about. But before anything else, we know that 61% of CEOs expect a startup competitor to disrupt their industry at any moment. This is true. Way back before, as we've seen in different areas in Silicon Valley, that giants such as Kodak, giants such as the taxi industry, giants such as the VCR industry were disrupted by startups like Uber, startups like Instagram, Netflix, and even Apple. And we've seen this, that even Nokia, one of the greatest stories of failure in corporate innovation management, which led to us questioning what should corporations do to be able to continuously innovate, as what a lot of tech companies are doing now, Google, Amazon, Apple, right? So this question led me to answer specific strategies for corporate innovation, which we think is powered by the entrepreneurial mindset that a person needs to have, even if you are employed inside the corporation even more. And this is where we felt that 10 years from now or 20 years from now, the corporations will need a lot of entrepreneurial talent, not only because they need to innovate, but secondly, to be able to stay resilient. And this is what we've seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, where all of the industries were actually very much affected. Okay? And this is what we know is true. If corporations don't disrupt themselves, a startup will. An up-and-comer, a startup who is wide-eyed, a fresh grad perhaps from Stanford or some Ivy League school or even in the Philippines, who is able to create a solution that customers love, a solution that customers will actually patronize, the corporation will have a very, very big challenge of becoming the Goliath to a David. And this is why we felt that prioritizing innovation today is key to unlocking post-crisis growth. And this is very important because even the conglomerates in the Philippines, their bottom line or their net revenue was heavily damaged because of the pandemic. There are changes in consumer behavior. And if you will notice, big corporations are unable to become agile because of the very different layers of management they have, number one. And number two, because they're very, very much preoccupied with trying to defend the status quo, with trying to defend current operations without regard to how are we going to create new growth for the next 5-10 years, and especially during the context of the pandemic. We know that the COVID-19 crisis presents an opportunity that even here in the Philippines, only few people feel, the executives feel that they're equipped to pursue. 90% believe that COVID-19 will fundamentally change the way they do their business in the next 5 years. Like, for example, in schools, where we're trying to help currently, digital transformation solutions, trying to make sure that learning is still there, trying to make sure that even if everything's online, you still have the same experience as if you were in the classroom. And a lot of people are trying to think, okay, should I take a gap year? Or should I, get what's readily available, for that particular school? And I think that's failure of innovation in general for the educational system. And it's an age-old adage that corporations, if they don't adapt to the times, the changes in megatrends of new consumer behavior, they are going to fail. 85% are concerned that the COVID-19 pandemic will have a lasting impact on their consumers and their needs. Like, for example, e-commerce industries, yes, their sales increased. However, we've seen a new trend, for example, for hyper-local commerce, meaning per community, per village. How are you going to do e-commerce there? And this is why it led us to create Neighborly. 21% feel that they have no resources or they don't have the expertise to actually manage innovation or create innovation within their company. And 2 out of 3 believe that this will be the most challenging next few years in their executive career. And this affected all of industries, for industrial, basic materials, communication services, retail, technology. Right? And nearly 3 out of 4 executives agree that changes brought the COVID-19 pandemic will be a big opportunity for growth if they're able to capitalize on it. Most of the companies right now that we've seen were birthed because of the financial crisis. Companies like Uber, companies like Instagram, companies like Facebook. After the financial crisis a few years back, they were able to create companies that capture the changes in consumer behavior. And these particular industries can actually still do that. And this is precisely why we created Embiggen Consulting, which is an innovation consulting firm specifically for emerging countries like the Philippines, Lebanon, Russia, and even ASEAN neighbors that we have. And what we did is we formed a co-founding team that specifically had experience in corporate innovation in Silicon Valley. And even professors in Stanford and Harvard are part of the consulting pool of our firm to be able to apply this to countries like Manila. What we wanted to do, more than creating organizational resilience, was to develop a culture of corporate entrepreneurship. And this is where we think that intrapreneurship in the corporate setting is very, very important. Because you will have all these strategies, corporate innovation, setting up an innovation lab, R&D units, digital transformation solutions, or even strategic foresight as a discipline. But if you don't have the people who will actually implement these particular strategies, it will not work out. And this is why we felt that we asked the question, so how do we now navigate the next normal? Okay? And we have 4 things to be able to do that. Number 1, corporate intrapreneurship as the missing function in the old organization. As I've mentioned earlier, a lot of corporations still try to defend their current bottom line, their current operations. But their challenge is, how do I create that culture to manage innovation in the long run? Because the great management thinker, Peter Drucker, said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Even if you have all of these strategies, if you don't have the people or corporate entrepreneurs to be able to fuel that strategy or implement the strategy, it won't work. Number 2 is that when you implement corporate intrapreneurship, it is sort of like your second founding. Because now you're creating new lines of businesses, creating new lines of revenue, while defending your current operations. No? Thirdly is entrepreneurial management in a corporation. What we've seen corporations do, and even the conglomerates, our clients, this is what they do. They use the same KPIs, such as accounting, such as time in, time out, no? To manage the entrepreneurs in their corporation. What happens is that their star talent end up transferring to another company. Because we feel that managing entrepreneurs is very different from managing a regular employee, right? So we need to be able to create systems and processes to be able to reward failure, because innovation requires failure. And this is what Mark Zuckerberg said: fail fast and fail often. However, you need to fail forward, right? So intrapreneurial management is very, very different in managing perhaps the regular employees, no? And lastly, innovation accounting. How do you now set KPIs? How do you now set results for innovation, which actually requires a lot of experimentation and iteration? So this is what needs to be done. every organization needs to be able to experiment rapidly with new products and new business models. One of our clients, a big client of ours in Emigan Consulting, is trying to disrupt an industry that's age old already because they're technically a glorified mom and pop shop. And they told us, Roland, how do we create? So, okay, we do have now the entrepreneurial talent. Okay, how do we train them, and how do we make sure we empower them with creating new ideas, creating new lines of businesses? Okay, so this is what we did, no? So later on, I'll be discussing the primordial framework for corporate innovation and corporate entrepreneurship. Okay, you need to be able to experiment rapidly with new products and new business models. The executives of a particular company don't have what we call the absorptive capacity, meaning they already don't know what's happening on the ground. They don't know what their customers feel. They don't know the problems of their customers. So aside from design thinking, which starts from empathy, you need to be able to create experimentation systems within your company. Okay? And only entrepreneurs are able to capture this particular strategy. No? So if you are an entrepreneur, even your the idea that you don't think will work inside your corporation, write it down and experiment on it. Okay? Number two, we need to be able to empower the most creative people. Okay? To be able to come up with ideas, to be able to read mega trends. Like right now, if this was a workshop, we'll probably write down what are the current mega trends because of that was forwarded because of the COVID-19 pandemic. One thing we've seen, obviously, is the work from home or the at-home phenomenon. So all industries are coming from the food industry. How do we cater to this at-home, work-from-home market? Number two, the beauty market, which was heavily affected as well. How now will you be able to, perhaps capture the at-home beauty segment? If you're a retailer of clothes, people don't go out and people don't really care about what they look like. And this is what we call the Zoom beauty phenomenon, right? So as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to see these particular trends, right? So like it is my common practice when I wake up. I usually read trends from CB Insights. I read Harvard Business Review and all these things. So this is a primordial discipline of an entrepreneur. No? And lastly, is to be able to engage repeatedly in a process of innovation. This is what people think as an entrepreneur. No? They think, ay, kasi pag negosyante yan, matalino yan, makakaisip ng solution. But that's not true. Because if you are able to follow this specific framework that I'm going to share with you later on, you can be an entrepreneur, okay, within your organization. Okay, so this is the framework, and it would probably end from this is the second to the last slide, and this is where I want to focus all of my talk. This is what we call the build, measure, learn framework. So it starts out with the idea that creates a product that gives you data and will be able to. This is the whole cycle of the experimentation of a corporate entrepreneur. Okay, what do I mean by this? Let's start off with the ideas part. The ideas is where perhaps you get an idea from a mega trend, right? Like the hyper-local community commerce trend, the at-home beauty trend. Okay, so if you are a food industry, the cloud kitchen trend, right? So these things you will know, these are economic shifts that happen. Okay, for example, this doesn't only apply perhaps to products, right? It also applies to certain processes within your organization, right? Okay, how do I now remove the fat from this process? How can I be more efficient? So you have an idea for that. Everyone has ideas, right? But the problem with the reason why corporate innovation fails is because they put all of their resources in one of these particular idea, in this project. Well, this is wrong. And what we need to do is to be able to experiment with using the least resources that we have in the company. Okay? So from the idea, you need to want to create a minimum viable product or an MVP. An MVP is the smallest unit of your product, an iteration of the process, an iteration perhaps of a new way of how to reorganize the HR system, right? You test that as an MVP. Enough, it doesn't need to be perfect. Ito yung sinasabi ni Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. If you launched and it is a perfect product, you've launched too late. Okay? Ulitin ko yan, if you've launched and it is a perfect product, you've launched too late. Okay? Because entrepreneurship, the same guy who said that intrapreneurship or getting ideas is like jumping off a cliff and building an airplane on the way down. Okay? So you create the minimum viable product, a high fidelity prototype, perhaps a drawing perhaps of your product, right? And to be able to talk to your customers as soon as possible. So you have this hypothesis that in your head that happen. Okay, my hypothesis is that the customer perhaps will want an at-home beauty solution because they can't go out of the house, right? That's a falsifiable hypothesis. Okay? Now you create a product for that and see if the market will respond. Do you need a lot of money for that? No. What you need to do is to be able to connect with your customers and see if you're actually solving a problem. And this is also one of the problems with entrepreneurs that we've seen in the past, in myself, because we put all of our eggs in one basket, like we collected all of our resources, right, and put it in one idea with the egoistic assumption that it's going to work, right? 99% of businesses will fail, right? And the way to be able to defy that is to be able to test your product as soon as you can. Okay? So when you have an idea, you build it, you have the product, then you measure the reaction of your customers. It happens as an entrepreneur, it happens inside the organization. If your stakeholders, if you want to improve the process of HR or logistics in your company, you need to be able to map it out with your customers by actually testing it on the ground, not an idea that is na hindi tines. No? So you need to be able to create it. And from there, when you measure that, you will have data. Okay, so in our particular business, what we do, we measure things, of course, like number of the usual KPIs, right? So number of clicks, number of engagement, no? But more than anything else, we also want to measure qualitative data. How does the customer react? How is the UI, the user interface, the user experience actually, what emotion does it derive from the customer? And from there, you will learn. And because you've learned, you've went through the whole process, you will now have another idea that is implementable, a hypothesis that is falsifiable, right? And this is a crucial difference when you have the usual accounting, the usual management practice of a corporation is that spreadsheets, and it's actually designed to minimize risk, right? However, as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to want to fail, because the faster you fail, the faster you go through this loop. Ideas, you build it, you create the product, you measure, you get the data, you learn from it, because you failed the first time, you do it again, and again, and again. And this is a crucial accounting innovation management practice, let alone other practices that we actually, advise corporations to do, is how to allocate the resources, right, for these particular failures. Right? A new product, new process, new service, a new reorganizational structure, right, will go through this process, right? For example, case in point, when we launched Miles, perhaps in FEU Tech, so it's a learning management system that we changed the way the equation for learning. What we did is we broke down physics, for example, the physics curriculum. Let's say you go through vector physics, right? You do not need the whole of calculus to be able to understand vector physics. What you need is algebra, right? So what we did is we tested, what if we just teach students algebra, can they now actually go to vector physics right away? So it was not a prerequisite of the whole subject, only a specific module. Right now, this was a hypothesis. We've built the product, and currently we are measuring inside the reaction of our customers, our stakeholders, our students, and of course the professors. How well are they going to be able to respond? And we have an overwhelming number of hypotheses that we've disproved and improved. Right. So we're currently in the iteration of we're currently in the cycle of iteration, continuous learning, agile. So every week we do have product development sessions. Right? So the question is, I think, is this. No? So okay, Roland, this sounds really good. This sounds really amazing. Framework, okay, build, measure, learn, right? But what if my boss doesn't allow me to be able to experiment, right? So in any entrepreneurial function, right? So in an organization, the crucial thing is for you to have a sponsor, right? So your boss, you can pitch your idea to your boss, right? Your boss most likely will be trained with the old management practice of reducing risk because he wants to save his own face to his boss, right? Or to the board of directors, right? But you need to be able to convince that if it's a bigger risk if we don't do this innovation, right? Not doing anything is the bigger risk because they need to, the usual management practice, okay, what is my bottom line for this quarter, for this year, right? So you need a separate accounting for that, for innovation. This is why we think these are 6 corporate innovation strategies that are usually working in Silicon Valley, are starting to work in the Philippines. So we know this, internal R&D, product innovation labs. This happened with Xerox. This is actually where Steve Jobs got the idea of a mouse, the mouse we use sa computer. Xerox was the one who created that, but they don't know how to commercialize that. Right? So it started there in product innovation labs. But sabi nila, like the criticism that they're all too technical. No? So they created something like number 2, Corporate Accelerator. What is a Corporate Accelerator? Basically, this is a separate unit from the company, right? That their only job is to test ideas. In Facebook, this is called the growth team. So the growth team are the smartest engineers that you're going to find in the world, and their only job is to experiment new features for Facebook. That's why you will see a lot of iterations. Product version nag-update parati, di ba, sa iOS or sa Android. Right? It's because of their growth team. And even Airbnb. Airbnb, if you will know their story, obviously the travel industry, the hospitality industry is one of the most hit sectors in the world. No? And right now they laid off a lot of people. No? However, Airbnb has a internal corporate accelerator function. This is why right now people are not booking their hotels. All their hosts are losing money. Right? But this is what they did. No? What they did was they iterated the Airbnb experience. Right? So, for example, currently what they did was they partnered with Tony Hawk, the famous skateboarder, right? And they get all of these famous people and they branded it as an Airbnb experience that you can do at home, right? Because Airbnb was about the experience, right? And their whole value proposition was that, right? But because of their corporate accelerator, in-house corporate accelerator function, they were able to pivot right away. What do people want, right? What do customers like, right? Third year, startup corporate partnerships, and of course, corporations still acquire companies, right? And right now, they invest in companies, which is number 5, corporate venture capital. And lastly is the venture builder. So number 2 and number 6 are trends that are currently happening in the corporate innovation landscape, where companies reduce the layers of management for innovation, right? Because again, we need to be able to fail, right? To be able to create innovation with the company, right? But this is separate because if you apply the same management practices again in an innovation unit or an entrepreneurial unit, it's not going to work out because ang daming approvals, right, and all these things. And the reason why startups actually disrupt these big corporations because they can really, really move fast. They're very agile. They're less layers of management, right? Number 6 is corporate venture building. This also requires a lot of what we call entrepreneurs in residence, right? Uh, Corporations like Smart and PLDT, they have a venture builder. This is where Paymaya came out, Gcash came out, right? And even right now, they Globe has 917 Ventures, which is the official venture builder or venture studio arm of Globe Telecom. Okay, and what they hire are entrepreneurs, people, the most creative people, right? So you might be asking the question, Roland, what if I'm not that creative? No? Or what if I don't have all these ideas, right? I think the only answer to that is you start first with the customer. If there is a problem that the customer would want solving, especially now in the COVID-19 pandemic, there are lots of customers. Hindi ka mawawala ng problems to solve, right? If you're in the corporation and perhaps you are in the F&B industry, right? You can go, if you think of an idea, a problem that perhaps your company has the resources to solve, pitch it to your boss, and he acts as a sponsor for that idea. Hopefully, he doesn't steal it from you. You still get the credit. But then, yeah, so you start with the customer, right? The pain point of the customer, and go from there, right? So, as an entrepreneur, or if you want to be a would-be entrepreneur, all you need to do is to be able to, number one, want to fail a lot of times, and number two, solve a problem for your customer. Okay, so I think that has been my part. I would love to have all your questions in the section, and yeah, let's start with the conversation. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Roland. Wow, that was really interesting. I mean, in terms of the way that corporations now need to adapt, there's a lot of merit, or a lot of good things that we can get, no, from this model that you shared a while ago, in terms of building. I guess maybe to kick it off, the questions, right? I have my own questions.
Yeah.
So maybe my question is how do we help entrepreneurs if they find themselves na nga in situations wherein um, that's not the corporate culture,
Yeah.
right? Like corporations that were traditionally brick and mortar, they have several products that were really good, and that's their main line. But because of this pandemic now, it's kind of it's a challenge, right? So they're asked to innovate, but the thing is, they're not allowed to. I know you mentioned this a while ago. Um, how do we help management create those safe, failures, or people that people know that they are in a safe place if they fail? Because nga, di ba, corporate, if you
Yeah.
fail, that goes in your KPI. Oy, nako, meron kang one, di ba? It's like a tally sheet. So how do we create that? Is there a way, or what can you suggest?
Yeah. So I'll answer the question in two parts. The first one as a business owner, right? And second one as an employee who might go counterculture. Okay, so let's go first to the first. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're a boss and you're afraid of failing, because again, innovation, as Sir Robbie's mentioned, innovation would really require a lot of trial and error. I think it's trying to make sense. Number one, that if you don't do this innovation, or at least try it out, what would happen to your organization? Right? Trying to think of the bigger picture in that particular industry. Secondly, this is one of the most progressive people or clients that we have. They're one of the biggest HVAC contractors in the Philippines. They service almost all of the Ayala properties. But what they did was they created an innovation fund. A fund that is meant a surplus fund. No? So it's not big. It's not big. No? So it's a surplus fund that their entrepreneurs can actually play around with to test ideas, to create prototypes. Because he understands that if he doesn't, obviously the construction industry, medyo, it's not working out well right now.
Yeah.
And they lost a lot of clients and a lot of projects are on hold. So himself, he created, he went to the board, and said, all right, obviously, if we don't do this in the next few years, we're not going to have a company anymore. So it is a leap of faith assumption, that they created, a falsifiable idea that they created, that if their assumption was this, that if I create an innovation function, or at least try to start an innovation function in my company, I will create 2 to 3 new lines of revenue in the next few years. Okay? So that fund, ang ginawa nila, no, the KPI, no, if naubos na yung fund na yun, right, and wala pa ring results, we stop this, no, and we just reinvest it in the current operation. However, if it succeeds, right, it is going to bring tenfold, no, and they currently have 20 new ideas that came out from the innovation funnel, but they're already here in the measuring part.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea, and this happened in the 3-month time. Okay? So from the idea, so they had 50 ideas. They screened it and screened it and screened it. Okay, based from the marketing studies, based from the industry trends that's gonna happen, based from the customer interviews that they had. These are the big guys, no? So construction industry. So they asked, no, they really did their research. They really got out of the building. Even the company owners, this is a big company already. They went out of the building. They went to the customers. If we do this, this particular product idea, what do you think? They even created an innovation council within their company, right? Just to be able to sort of screen and judge ideas that come out from the boardroom, right? So they created 20 MVPs, or the minimum viable products, right? And they launched it. Right? They're currently measuring, and from there you will now have 20, diba? You will now have syempre, hindi naman lahat kaya implement, right? Or the resources are very few. So I think they're gonna put more of the resources in the top 2 ideas or products that had traction, meaning may bumili na customer. It's the greatest vote of confidence, of course, when people give you money, when they buy from you. So this is the first answer. No? So as a boss, you need to be able to pitch it to your board, or even to your boss. No? Number 2, as a person who is an entrepreneur who doesn't have that culture yet, this is what I would suggest, and this is one of the people in one of the airlines did. He did a very comprehensive market study of his idea. Presented it to the boss. Kasi kaibigan niya yata yung boss niya, no? So medyo okay. And that boss, both of them presented to the VP. And the VP now became the innovation sponsor. Okay. The sponsor now will now go to the board. Okay, can we test this idea with the minimum resources, with the least resources that we can? No? So as an entrepreneur, and if you have this idea for the betterment of your company, number 1, don't be afraid to tell your boss. Okay. Number 2, do your homework. Do all the marketing studies you can. Prove that your idea is worth looking at. Right? It's like pitching to a Shark Tank investor. Think of your boss as the investor, right? And you're trying to pitch that idea to the person. And if ever the idea fails, or the idea didn't fly, that's okay. Come up with another one. Right? If it flies, then there will be now a new culture shift in your company. So I think you have nothing to lose, basically, if you're a corporate entrepreneur or an aspiring corporate entrepreneur.
Great. And I like the idea or that suggestion for corporates. I guess that would be a suggestion for a lot of companies now, that to have something like a fund for intrapreneurship projects, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of like an R&D that,
Yeah.
you know, if you're not into pharmacy or anything that develops new things, but you can still have you know, something like an in-house fund for entrepreneurship ideas. And I think that's something that corporations can actually do now, because
Yeah.
in light of this situation that well, people are now working from home, maybe there's some savings also there that they can use to, you know, innovate and change culture there. Galing, nice, thank you. We'll go to a question from one of our viewers on FB Live. This person is very famous, anonymous.
Nako.
So so we always get questions from anonymous. So the question is, do you think corporate entrepreneurship is for everyone, like for all industries? Or do you think there are industries that are not really meant for that type of culture? Interesting.
Okay. Industries came out. Like let's backtrack now. Industries are industries to begin with because there's a customer.
Mhm.
Okay? Right now, because of the pandemic, all industries are affected.
Yes.
There are new customer behaviors and there are new customer problems.
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship, or the whole discipline of entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, is problem solving. If there are no problems in your industry, which I doubt, then this is not for you. Okay? You're correct, no? So it will not be applied to all industries. But if there is a problem, a process, not necessarily a new invention, a new product, but a process, a better way of doing things or something, entrepreneurship can be applied to you or to that particular industry. Um, this is, I don't think in the Philippines, like perhaps like this. Um, right now we're trying to do a home cooking startup. I didn't think home cooking can be disrupted because it's such a, it's an everyday thing. Ano pa ba, di ba? Ano pa bang pwedeng gawin? But we
Uh-huh.
found three things to innovate or to at least test the idea from. And even it's perhaps maybe applying, and what we did, no, was applying data science and artificial intelligence to that particular industry. No? But to answer your question more directly, I don't think there's an industry that's exempted
Mhm.
from problems.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur or a would-be entrepreneur, you can always think of solutions to a current problem, right? Or even uncover problems that you didn't think or
Mhm.
existed.
Yeah.
So yes, for all industries.
Galing. Yes. Okay. So we have another question from Anonymous again. So, very famous to talaga si Anonymous. Eh.
Oh.
Okay. So in terms of data and consumers' behaviors, so much has changed and are still changing. Is there a way we can pitch our ideas and get the buy-in in the current environment? Have you seen any significant changes in the current environment that you think will affect our business, not just during COVID, but beyond it?
Okay. So I
So
wrote a
I'm not
yeah,
sure what the business is,
yeah.
but in general, siguro. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll try to answer this the best way I can and
Mhm.
the way I understood it.
Sure.
Um, so I wrote a paper recently for grad school. It's from a futures thinking class.
Mhm.
It's called how corporations will innovate in the next decade. Um, so if the question was about how can you pitch a new process, a new idea, um, with very limited resources or very scarce resources because of the pandemic, no, I think that's the question.
Mhm.
Yes, you can. No? Um, Going back to my answer earlier about the innovation fund or even innovation, setting up an innovation team. Um, I think this is needed more than ever.
Mhm.
corporations right now, if they see that an idea is very promising, that can potentially create new lines of businesses for them, and to improve their bottom line by end of 2020 and improve it for 2021, I am confident that they will at least talk about your idea.
Yeah.
Again, it's true with entrepreneurs, even within the corporation. No? Like they feel afraid, no, to pitch their idea. But I suggest just try to go for it. No? Whether a small, medium, or large enterprise already, there will be always, again, something to be solved.
Right.
There will always be, and this is the profit is, to me, profit kasi is just a result of how many customers you have because you solve the problem for that person. So profit is only a function of how many problems did you solve for a particular demographic. It is basically your scorecard, no? If I may. But profit is not the end goal. Diba? To be honest, in innovation, which I failed to mention earlier, learning is a currency of innovation. So this one, so diba, build, measure, learn. This part is actually something that will give you profits in the future. Why? Because if you went out of the building, like one of my friends did, no, they uncovered a lot of new things in the HVAC industry that they didn't think existed. Right? So it is not really profit, no. So kaya nga we need to change innovation or the way we measure innovation, no. Learning is also a measurement, no. So the number of times you failed is directly proportional to the learnings that you had for that specific market segment, for that specific problem of choice in your company. Okay. So a good example is Teflon, no. This is, I think, one of the things that was really important. I'll give two examples. Google also. So let's start with Teflon. Teflon, di ba yung pinagluluto, right? Yung nasa coating nung ano.
Yeah.
That was actually that discovery was from space. It is not from Earth, no. And so NASA scientists discovered that, right? And it became a cooking material all over the world. And it was not the main objective of Teflon, but it is now a separate industry altogether, right? And the problem that they solve is that we need a non-stick pan, basically. Right? Number two is the Google argument, no? The Google Wave argument. So a Google Wave argument is this, no? This is an argument for corporate innovation. The Google Wave argument was that it was a project that in Google, kasi 20% of their time can be devoted. All of their employees can devote 20% of their time to a project. Okay? 80%, of course, is their actual job. No? So 20% of their time is experimenting. That's the Google culture. No? So they allow, sila Sergey allow that. The Google Wave project failed. But that was the same project that gave birth to G Suite, Gmail, Google Maps, right? Because of the unintended learnings they got from there.
Nice.
So ang nangyari, yun na yung one of the main drivers for profit of Google is now the G Suite, the Google tools, right? That they didn't think would even be something worth talking about to begin with. Why? Because they built it, right? They built, they failed, they measured, they learned from that, and they built again.
Yeah.
Right? They built again. So, sorry, ang dami nang nasabi, no? But
okay lang.
But yeah, so to answer your question, in this particular pandemic, all the more that there is sort of permissibility to think of new ideas.
Yeah.
Right? Even if your corporate culture doesn't dictate. The mere fact that you have an idea to better the company might even be the reason why you'll get promoted.
Oh, Yeah. Actually, you made a good point also there that somehow we need to be open always, not just to the ideas that we're pitching, but to the results or the consequences. Well, I don't want to use the word consequence, but okay, to the how do you call that? The after effects or the whatever comes out of what it is you're trying to achieve. Because sometimes you don't notice that you're trying to do one thing but then something else comes out, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's even better than what you were trying to achieve in the first place. So I guess there has to be openness now also even to that, because otherwise we limit ourselves to just what we can come up with, right? And what
Yeah.
we can actually build on something else.
Yeah.
Great. We have a question from a Miss Laura Pamela Esteban. So, hi. Oh, nag-hi talaga. Okay. Entrepreneurship is a whole new thing for me. So I looked it up on Google. It says, okay, refers to a system that allows an employee to act like an entrepreneur within a company or other organization. I think it's a great idea to be an entrepreneur. What skills do I need to develop to be a successful entrepreneur? She's actually asking a question that I wanted to ask
Yeah.
also. Yeah, what are steps that you can take if you don't feel like you're innovative enough or you've never done it, and now you want to? What do you do?
Step one is like find a problem.
Okay.
So that's always where we're gonna uh, go, because innovation won't work if there's no problem to be solved.
Right.
So actually, just to it's a funny thing, no. So a client was talking to us, and saying, Roland, I want to do blockchain. So this is a bank, no. Roland, I want to do blockchain, no. Sabi namin, for what? For what? No? And they said, kasi alam mo other banks are doing it. Alam mo naman yun
Yeah.
Perhaps for marketing purposes. No? I don't know. I don't know. but I said, okay, what customer pain point are you solving? And he couldn't answer. And this is a top executive for that bank.
Okay.
Right? Top executive yan. No? So sabi ko, bakit kaya ganun? Bakit? No? So again, we go back to the problem. No? Innovation will always come from a problem that no one was willing to solve, or a problem that only you can see. No? And most likely than not, it will be shut down by your boss or whoever. No?
Yeah.
But you try your best to pitch that, right? Syempre, if wala talagang resources, then wala, no? But this is actually one of the reasons also that companies fail, no? They're not able to retain their superstar talent. Because they're not challenged, right? But innovation is challenging. And usually what we've seen, no, especially in Silicon Valley, is that they reallocate their star talent to the innovation unit. Okay? So they stick there, no? So ang taas nung retention rate nila. So again, find a problem to solve. Number two, think like a scientist. Experiment. Launch this, no? So ito lang, you just remember this, no? The build, measure, learn. So ideas, product, data. So it's the build, measure, learn loop. It just goes back and forth, no? And lastly, I think more than the skill, I think it's the attitude. More again, parang culture lang yan, no? So culture is more important than strategy. And the same time, even if you're very, very good, no, if you're very talented, but then and you know all of these strategies, you even have a PhD in strategy, I don't know, right? But your attitude doesn't work out, no? Then it's not gonna work out for you. So personally, for me, try to develop that curiosity mindset. Try to develop that experimentation mindset. And most importantly, develop that problem-solving mindset. No? Hindi yung whining. Ang dami kasing employee ni ganito grabe si boss, daming pinapagawa. Diba? Daming grabe, work from home, sobrang busy. No? But an entrepreneur doesn't say that.
True.
Right? The entrepreneur is very resilient. So kahit ano pang failure yan, let's do it. Let's do it again. No? So let's without losing enthusiasm. They go failure to failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. And that attitude is actually a very important attitude here. The build, measure, learn framework.
Yeah.
Right? So if you are starting out, or as an entrepreneur, check your attitude. No? Let's see if this is something that this is not for everyone. No, it is going against, again, if it's counterculture in your organization, then you might be the key, to be able to unlock that culture. But more importantly, it's your personal resilience. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. The same thing. So
I like
yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
I like that. Actually, if you look at successful entrepreneurs, or even those who have risen from ranks as intrapreneurs,
Yeah.
Whether they're still in corporate or they have their own successful businesses, it's really that resilience that they have. So people tend to ask, what makes an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, and it really begins with that, the attitude, and that's something that's very important because you control that.
Yeah.
That's something that you control. Great. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Okay.
And this is from Anonymous again. Okay. So, Anonymous had another question, but it was similar to what you just answered. So I'll move on to the next question there, which is: current economies are facing a lot of challenges, not just locally, but internationally. Having your businesses connected locally and internally too, any advice for startups on how we can prepare for the oncoming storms? I guess maybe what they're looking, what this person is trying to figure out is, we know that this pandemic is going to go on, right? I mean, I think it was last August the WHO said that this could go on for another 2 years, and so I mean, even with the advent of a vaccine, because there's a whole lot of other things that can happen there. So how can we prepare? How can companies, SMEs maybe in particular, because they're hit really hard, but even for the bigger organizations or companies, what can they do to prepare?
I'll answer this question not by strategy but by attitude. Again, number one, go back to your why. And it's as an entrepreneur myself, I know what you're going through. Myself and a lot of my friends who are entrepreneurs were heavily affected by this. So faith is number one. Number two is the problem-solving mindset again. So I know a lot of perhaps restaurant owners who embraced digital transformation, who embraced going online, who embraced this build, measure, learn. And they weren't afraid to fail. Right? Because perhaps to them, failure is not doing anything or trying a new idea. When you ask about the storm and all these things, I think we are in the storm right now. So your faith and your resilience will really be tested. And I think it's very important for you to be tuned in to Pocket Mentor and all the other talks that will really help you elevate your mindset or even transcend the current storm that we're in. Because I fully believe that when you surround yourself with the best people, you learn from them, you continuously upgrade yourself, invest in yourself. This is something that you will bring with or without the pandemic. All these, the build, measure, learn framework, you will read it in Lean Startup, you will read it in all the other innovation books. But that's one thing you can't learn without doing, which is your attitude, no, and your faith. No? That's something you need to, you know, be able to. It's like a muscle that you need to train. When I was speaking in Go Negosyo like the other day, sorry, a month ago, no, this was a question that was asked. No? Kasi it was a startup series and like what can startups do to be able to innovate. And this is, I think, it's the only thing that I told them. No amount of strategy would save you. You know, sabi ko, just faith and hope and continuously invest in yourself and learn as much as you can. So congratulations for being here in Pocket Mentor, and hopefully this talk sort of helped you a bit. To if you have a new idea for your existing customer, you do the build, measure, learn framework. You test it with minimum resources, and continuously do that, and keep the faith. I'm sure we'll get out of this together.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much, Roland. And I think that's all the time we have today. But thank you for everything that you shared. And yes, we are in the midst of the storm, and really it's really looking forward rather than being stuck, to where we are and looking at the past and say, oh, before we could go out and do stuff. But what can we do now moving forward? And I think that's important. So thank you again so much, Roland, for being here in Pocket Mentor. It was such a interesting and eye-opening session for everyone today. So to our viewers in Pocket Mentor Live, thank you so much for tuning in today. Again, thank you to our speaker, Rolan Garcia. We'll be doing this again soon. So please follow or like our page for announcements. And if you want another session of purposeful learning, because that's what we do here in Pocket Mentor, and that's what we're all about. We're here to inspire you and give you tools that you need to live more fully and succeed in life. So again, thank you everyone who listened and watched. We hope you had a great learning time. See you soon and stay safe. This is Robbie Zialceta for Pocket Mentor, signing off for today. See you soon.